Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the C-Man, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down. And me, oh my, does 2024 just continue to not disappoint? We've talked about how horror is on one of these 2022 runs right now this year, where just about everything that's coming out is hitting big time. But that, for me at least, seems to be the general vibe toward film this year. After seeing this movie, I was logging my letterboxd, and I have 30 entries thus far from 2024, three of which are below a 2.5. That means 27 of the 30 would be fresh for me, which I think is really, really strong. I know I like a lot of things, and I try not to go to things I don't think I'll like, but nevertheless, I think the quality of film this year has just been very, very high. And this film in particular is one that I did not expect to feel the way I feel about this movie. Yes, I love a good psychosexual thriller. Cruel Intentions, one of my all-time faves. Even another tennis movie, Match Point, kind of gives you vibes of what is coming with this one, and I was very excited for that. But never in a million years did I expect my jaw to still be on the Portchester AMC theater floor. Holy cow, man. This is a movie that needed to stick the landing. And Luca Guadagnino did that. What are we talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat? We are getting ready to dive in spoiler free into Challengers. And yeah, as I said, this is a movie that I was pumped about, right? You got three tennis players being portrayed by Zendaya, Mike Faist, and Josh O'Connor, and they meet in college. They have an interesting sexual attraction to each other. They develop a little thing that kind of creates this relationship between the three of them that stems a very, very long time up until the present, which is where the movie is taking place, where, as we've seen in the trailers, Zendaya's character Tashi is married to Art and is also his coach, and he then runs into Josh O'Connor's Patrick at this tournament where we watch their match is what the main, like, capsule for the movie is. And it functions in all the ways that you would want it to, man. This movie is super sexy. The sexual tension is super high. And the writing is just absolutely phenomenal. Like, it did all the things that I wanted it to do, and then a ton of stuff I didn't know that I needed it to do. And just the way that it's played and how it tees up things for Luca, and just how he handles this from a filmmaking perspective, from the cinematography to the incorporation of, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's score, to the editing and to just the performances. Like, everything in this movie is absolutely working for me. But 2/3 of the way through, I wasn't sure if I was gonna love it. Like I said, the third act needed to stick the landing, and the third act is tremendous. But the finale in particular, like I said, my jaw is still on the floor back at the AMC in Portchester. And it's one of those things where this is a movie where everything for me really starts and stems from the script, which comes to us from Justin Kuritzkes. And what's wild is this is his first feature film script. And this thing is nice. You know what I mean? Like, this has a potential to at least be nominated, if not win, Best Original Screenplay when we get to the 2024 Oscars and just award season in general. Like, this thing is cooking. And it is the special sauce, the ingredient that Luca Guadagnino needed to pull off just such a tremendous film. But the other thing that's crazy when it comes to Kuritzkes is his partner is Celine Song, the writer-director of Past Lives. Her first feature film, which is just crazy. Like, talk about a new Hollywood power couple to keep your eyes on. Like, if these two come out swinging with scripts that are Oscar worthy on their first go, I can't wait to see what both of them do separately. And I'd kind of like to see them maybe come together and do a movie together. I think that'd be kind of cool. But the both of them are off to a very, very strong start. But when it comes to Kuritzkes, the thing that I love, I think, the most is how he builds our investment in these characters. Like, the way in which we meet them, how we kind of experience their story just sucks you in and draws you in. And then each character has very specific things going on that you are either going to be gravitating towards, repelled by, allured by, and because of that, you get a legitimate emotional attachment and investment in all three. I personally had very different emotional feelings towards these three. I was very, very pro somebody. I was kind of in the middle on somebody, and I was very, very not pro the third person. And the way in which Kuritzkes is able to play with the characters in that way and create these emotions, I think really pays off when you get to the finale and what he builds, and where you're down this backstretch where I wasn't sure if I was going to be over the moon about this movie. I wasn't sure if I was going to be happy walking out of the theater, not because the movie wasn't good, but just because of where it took me. And then instead, you get to an end where you're just yelling like Tashi does in the trailer, like, come on! Like, it is just a perfect build and crescendo, and that emotional draw to the characters really invests you in that in a way where you get just caught up in the magic of what's happening in the finale, where it lands exactly where it needs to for your jaw to just be on the floor, and as an audience member be super, super satisfied. And one of the other things too that I love that Kuritzkes plays with and tees up for Luca to do really great things with visually is how Art and Patrick are kind of mirror images of each other, right? There's so many things about them that are similar, from like what drives them to the things that they're interested in, but at the same time they are also inherently the polar opposite of each other. It's almost like you're looking at the like good and bad angel that you'd see pop up on somebody's shoulders with these two guys. And I think it's really, really interesting in how that's going to draw your audience in, but also how that plays with Tashi. And you can understand, because of the way these two guys are kind of mirrors, why she's so attracted to both of them, why she has interest in both of them, and how each of them satisfies different needs for Tashi. And then on the inverse, even though these two guys are very different and their general tastes could be completely different, you understand why they're both attracted to Tashi, and you understand why when they are together, like they, spoilers, but they start their careers off as both doubles and singles players. So these guys are partners. And you understand why that partnership works so well, because they pick each other up in the spots that lack. And you see that kind of going on very clearly with the two of them, but just in general, like even when Tashi is interacting with them. And then I think that leads wonderfully into, like I said, the attraction and desire aspects of the story, because I love how this thing goes into what draws people to each other, and then what leads, or what those people are willing to do to obtain the things that they desire. Like, how far is a person willing to go? Where is that line for each of these three, and how does that then play into this love triangle thing that's been built throughout the movie? Like, it's just really, really wonderful to watch that stuff. And then because all of that stuff is on display, this movie is very, very sexy. And it's very sexy with no sex, which is kind of crazy. Like, I think we see Josh O'Connor's butt the closest we get to any nudity with the three of them. Zendaya has like a semi see-through bra on, but that's it. It's like hot makeout sessions, and then just this unbelievable sexual tension between the three of these people. And just the way the movie plays is just, it oozes sex appeal, but in a way that we didn't see Poor Things or even Saltburn, right? Like, the way they played in this kind of realm, very different from how this film plays. And that plays to Kuritzkes' plan almost, where it's like you build this tension that never gets an actual release on screen, and thus as an audience member you are kind of feeling this tension build and build and build till you get to the crescendo where that release is supposed to be, where you're gonna shout, come on. It's just wonderful, and I loved watching how he just played with all of that stuff to elevate those elements to get you to where he wants you to be by the end of the movie. And then I just thought the usage of tennis was perfection in choice for how to, what kind of vehicle to use for this movie. And I love that you're able to mirror a lot of things that happen in tennis by showing us that in the match that's happening, but also then flipping it into the personal lives of each of these characters, right? The things that drive them, what they are drawn to, what they really love, and how, like, Tashi has this wonderful moment where she kind of just talks about the purity of tennis, and that concept, you kind of feel it flowing through the movie. And then the structure of the film allows Kuritzkes to play, but mostly tee up Luca to play with the idea of turning the audience basically into a tennis ball, giving you this feeling of back and forthness, like a long volley that never ends and builds to this wonderful moment. And it starts with the structure of the film. Like, Kuritzkes does not tell this chronologically. We start in the present day with this match that is going to be the last thing that we see. So you kind of bookend it with the present, and in the middle, you're jumping all over the place. Sometimes you're jumping back to a piece of the past where you can still go back further. Sometimes you're jumping all the way back to present, then in between where the furthest past is. And like you're just bouncing to all these spots. And at first it kind of, knocked me off balance. And I was taken aback where I was like, oh, okay, so we're gonna go flashbacks. But it's not even flashbacks. It's just the way that like these situations that he builds lead into each other. So when you go to call back something that's happened previously before the moment that the movie starts in, you're able to take things that are happening in the present and mirror them with things from the past that build this thing in a way where you can see some things coming, but it keeps some of the surprises and twists and turns covered a little bit more because of the way that's being presented. And then just the physical moving back and forth on the timeline is throwing you as an audience member back and forth. And it's very difficult to get your footing. And like I said, that really leads to an energy that Luca is then able to put on screen. And it starts with that kind of back and forth idea in the filmmaking. Like visually, when we're in the tennis match, the camera is going to move you this way. You'll see the audience and you're watching them watch the tennis match and they're going back and forth. There are these wonderful edits sometimes that'll just kind of spin your head and almost create a dizzying effect. Like things where you'll see like Art swinging and you get to hear and like Patrick finishes his swing and you're like, whoa, what just happened? And that type of wonderful editing that we get from Marco Costa throughout the whole film, the way he edits and transitions from the present to the different parts of the past is just magical. But it does create this weird sensation you're watching that never lets you kind of get your footing. And then when you look at what cinematographer Sayombhu Mukdeeprom is doing, like, this thing is just gorgeous to look at. It's super sexy. I mean, you want to talk about intense sport activity leading to dripping sweat and that just getting thrown at you in ways that are just very, very alluring. Like the sweat in this movie is sexy, and everything that is on screen for the most part is sexy. And I love how he builds that through a bunch of different approaches. Things that like these really, really intimate one shots or two shots, and how he can use these wonderful close-ups to build that sexual tension or just the general tension in a moment. How he's able to film these just wonderful tennis sequences. Like the way he shoots the tennis sequences are kind of unlike what I've ever seen before from a tennis movie. And it gives you, again, this vibe where physically as an audience member, it feels like you're being tossed around. And he goes so far to where like the idea of turning the audience into a tennis ball clicked in toward the end of the movie, where like he takes on first like a first person shooter form, so it's like you're coming from the actual tennis players, which just creates this very off balance back and forth kind of movement. And then he literally turns the camera into the tennis ball, and then the dizzying pieces of the film started to make sense, because as a tennis ball you're not just going back and forth, you're spinning. It's you like, and that visual just kind of locked all that stuff in. And just what Mukdeeprom is doing throughout the whole film is wonderful. And then, like I said, Luca just knows how to take all these things and put them together to create this effect of a volley happening on screen. Like, you bring in the sound design here. The sound design is phenomenal in this movie. I mean, it builds, like I said, that vibe from the sensual grunting that happens just naturally in tennis, and how that plays into things that then go on inside of the relationship, things that we jump to the impact on the ball. Like the way the sound of the ball being smacked can change. Sometimes it needs to be softer. Sometimes it needs to be as hard as possible. Between different players, the way the ball sounds is different. And that's very much the very same with the flow. How Luca moves this thing. There are moments that are exhilarating. There are moments that slow down. The pacing has to pick up and go, and it's almost like this beautiful dance. But all of it plays to this volleying effect where your audience kind of becomes the tennis ball, and I loved every part of that. And then, like I said, how the sexuality plays in this movie, it's all to build tension, and how he does that throughout the film, it just builds perfectly. And then to put it through the psychological thriller prism, like, it's not like a scary movie, but you are drawn to the edge of your seat continually throughout the film. And just the uncomfortable amounts of tension. Like, there are moments where you're just like, damn, because things are hot. But then there are moments where the tension between the characters is so tense. You're just like, oh my God, what is going to happen? And all of that, like I said, just kind of builds into this sexual overall tension build that climaxes at the exact perfect moment. And yeah, you're getting both on screen and metaphorical sexiness from Luca the whole film. And like I said before, the slow mo choices are just brilliant. Like, we've seen some people overuse slow mo, use it in the wrong ways, but when it's used, it can be so effective. And when you're trying to get that oozing sex feel without having any oozing sex in the movie, those slow mo moments, specifically around the sweat dripping, when the guys are like getting ready to shoot it, but your head's down, it's just, it all plays into that allure. And then, you get these just wonderful, sexy back and forths with really sexy people on screen. And I just love what you do, from how they move to how they talk to how they interact with each other, whether it's a good interaction or bad interaction. It all always feels like the people on screen are just ready to rip each other's clothes off. And I love that vibe that Luca builds. And then the other thing, like I said, in the script, that I think Luca does very well with, is the idea of that mirror image of two people, right? Like, it's almost the same person, but they're total opposites of each other. And visually, that editing that we talked about that comes from Marco Costa, like, it allows you to have them reach for a ball, but the ball goes to the same kind of spot for the other guy. So he's doing something similar, where you're in the motion of one swing and it finishes on the other guy's swing. Like, it allowed the editing to do some really fun things. And I just loved how you can so easily see everything about these two guys. They're the same person, but they're not. And it goes down from anything to how they function on and off the court, their wardrobe choices, a lot of black to one guy, a lot of white to another. The temperaments, a little bit more clean cut, a little bit more dirty and grimy. The idea of, like, your typical good guy, your typical bad guy. Like, the thing that can be alluring on either side, the bad boy vibe, or the guy you could build a relationship with. And how that lives there for Tashi with both of them is just wonderfully put together by Luca on screen, with the situations that you put these three in. And I love how he builds all of that. And, like, there are times like where you just need to be on screen. Like, Patrick, you can almost smell him. He's so grimy sometimes. And Art is so clean cut and always seems to be making the right decision, that, you can see how he should be the one you pick, but you also see how you might want to lean more toward Patrick. And I just thought Guadagnino played with all that stuff in such wonderful ways to tee up our performers for brilliant performances. And Zendaya, as we know, is one of my favorite actors in the entire world, and I think she is one of the best in the entire world. And a movie like this, you really can highlight the things that she's great at, right? Like, she's so good at just making a look, moving her eyes, scrunching her face, and you feel and understand everything that's going on with her. And there's so much internal stuff happening with Tashi that really, really is useful and key for that character to be able to do those things. But then just the way that she can swing from being, this person who has a level head and you can see is just this awesome person, but you get her onto the court, you get her coaching or playing or talking about tennis, and there is something else there. And that drive and piece of her exists in her normal life too. And she looks and plays the part perfectly of the future of tennis kind of person before her knee injury. And how she just handles and deals all that with that stuff is tremendous. And what's crazy is this is almost like a Barbie situation, where Margot did exactly what we knew she was going to do, and she was tremendous, but it made Ken pop a little more. Same thing here, man. Zendaya does everything you expect her to do in this movie, and she does it flawlessly and effortlessly. And then you get these two guys in Mike Faist and Josh O'Connor who you haven't gotten to spend a lot of time with or see them in this kind of a way, and they really, really popped. I mean, I just loved everything that was going on with them. Their chemistry between each other, like I said, they're partners on the court at one point. So you get this where they can kind of just see each other, how they speak to each other, both verbally and through body language. Like there's just this vibe between them, and the energy that courses through the three of them is so fascinating when they are all together. And then when you are separate with them or in individual pairings, how they interact with each other. And I just loved how well Faced kind of pulls off the younger version of himself, where he's kind of like this kid who's got this talent but hasn't quite put it together, but if he could be the best. And then when you see him in his career as a tennis player, where he has achieved these big things and is an all, like, is a great player, he has that carry and that confidence to him, and how he's able to play with that specifically as an adult, considering the way things were when he was younger. Like what you get from O'Connor, and how he is the more dominant of the two when they're younger, and seems to be the more promising one, but has less focus. So when you get to where we are in the present, tables have kind of turned for him, and he's not in such a great spot, right? Which plays into the grimy and the opposite feel of art between him and Patrick. But O'Connor just relishes in all that stuff, man, and just some of the looks that he has at people, and just some of the moments, specifically, like I said, when it's one on ones, like him and Art, him and Tashi, those moments just pop. And what I heard, he was Prince Charles in The Crown. Talk about a complete 180 as a character. But Faist and O'Connor both are just tremendous, and like I said, what they're doing on screen elicits real emotions, and the chemistry between the three of them is just dynamite. And how it, like I said, it just differs depending on what situation or who's in the room at any given time. And they are the three main characters. They carry this whole thing, and they really are the only ones to talk about, except for the umpire in the match. Obviously, in a tennis match, there's an umpire who calls, where the score is, leans on his, line judges to figure out what's in and out. He can award penalties, things of all that, and you need this guy there. And we get Darnell Appling. From what I've heard, he is Zendaya's assistant, but he also has some acting chops, and he has very little screen time. But every time he is on the screen, he makes a real impact, whether it's his body language, how he interacts with Faist and O'Connor. Like, he just pops. And obvious with the big three in this movie to keep your eyes on them, but I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on Darnell Appling too. And like I said, the performances just in general are cooking, and everything in this movie is cooking. Specifically, the score, the Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross score that I did not mention is dynamite. Like, from go, the minute it starts, you're just like, oh, these guys are at it again. We're in for something interesting. And they too are able to play with this idea of back and forth and opposites in the tones and the types of scoring that they do, and where they pop things at certain points. Like, it is a roller coaster musically. And then the soundtrack is fantastic. Like, I'm tempted to almost go download those and throw them on in the car. Like, the scoring and the soundtrack is just wonderful. And what Reznor and Ross do, and how it complements everything Luca is building with this whole concept of utilizing the tennis and stuff, it all clicks in. And like I said, you get to a finale where you're just jaw on the floor, and this thing really, really worked. So let's get the C Maniacs up, give this bad boy a score. Like I said, I think treating the audience like a tennis ball, and mirroring that both visually, audibly, musically, performance-wise, writing-wise, like, that whole concept was just genius from Kuritzkes, and it really does set up Luca to do wonderful things, and everybody from the technical ends that are in this movie to really do things that pop. And everything for this one for me lands on the script. The script tees everything up, and it is absolutely brilliant. From building the sexual tension to the suspense thrills, where, like, you are just constantly brought to the edge of your seat, and to the building of that and not letting a release happen until right at the end when you need to let it go. And it just brings everything together perfectly, to the tennis, to the timeline jumping structure, to the relationship between these three. Like, everything in the script is cooking. It pulls the audience in immediately and just takes you on a wonderful ride that's filled with desire and sexuality and what people want, what they'll do to get what they want, whether it's personally, professionally, romantically. Like everything in the script is just so rich, and that lets Luca do wonderful things on the filmmaking side and bring this thing to life visually in a way where this is, I think, one of the best movies of the entire year. And then you throw in those three performances, and I'm like nothing's topping Dune this year. But is there enough to put it above Love Lies Bleeding? I don't know. I think right now I'd have it at 3. But the more I sit with it, the more I think with it, this has a chance to be like my second favorite movie of the year. And that would put Zendaya in, like, for me, the top 2 movies of the year. But even if it's like 2 out of the top 3, like, unbelievable stuff for her this year, and just an unbelievable movie. Everybody was cooking, and I'm going 4.5 out of 5. C. Maniacs. I loved Challengers, and I was expecting to like it. But this movie blew me away in a way where everybody I talked to, I'm just like, this thing is... I was audibly gasping and making noises and moving around at the end of the film where, like, people were probably thinking I'm nuts, but it elicits a lot out of its audience. And I just think that every piece of it builds to that. And this whole group that brought Challengers to us, I hope they get to have some fun at the end of the year. But I'm going to shut up. Flip it over to you. I want to know what you guys are thinking. Have you seen Challengers? Keep it spoiler free, but what was working for you? Did you feel that back and forth vibe? Did you think that was intentional? Did you think it added to the movie? And if you take that away, what did you think of the sexual tension being built throughout the course of the movie to get you to a perfect climax at the end? Did that function for you that way? Did you feel like you needed release elsewhere in the movie? You know, places to cut some of that tension. Did you feel like it was that tense? Did the sexiness work? Did the visuals work? Did the story, did the structure, what was and wasn't working? And if you haven't seen the film, or you like my friends, they're like, all right, Corey, you sold me, I gotta go see this movie this week. Are you gonna run out to see it? Is this something that was already on your, anticipated list for the year? Anything you got, good, bad, indifferent, on Challengers, put it down below in the comments section. Look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime. We're talking movies, TV, trailer, reactions. We got The Fall Guy coming out this week, so you want to see my reactions and thoughts about that. You just dig the vibe. You want to show a little love and support. Hey, Moms is coming to Fall Guy with me, so maybe Moms is going to pop up on the channel for the first time in a while. You want to show her a little love and support? Well, then show me a little love and support, because she loves me, and she loves when she sees those numbers go up. And if you dig that and you want to show a little love and support, come join C-Maniac Nation. Super easy. Jump over there, hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time, for the C-Man's Cinema Sit Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace.
Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? Winter Ken here, where we grow out our roots and our beard, letting you know that you can see some new C-Man videos right up here and right down here. And if you want all those videos and show that man a little love and support, come join C-Maniac Nation right over there, and the C-Man will catch you on the next one.